Miss Lizzie. I don't ever smoke the dizzy, but we can always share some disease. It's just a cup in time. This song doesn't have to run. Life's all of us, not every moment we can be feeling fine. I wanna share a moment, just a second if you will, maybe even a cup of thrill. We could share this performance. It's tea time, come sit with me.
Well, welcome guys. Miss Liz in the house. That's right. I wasn't here this afternoon. That tea time will be rescheduled for a later date, but we have the incredible Alan R. Warren in the background here, and we're going to talk about his tea tonight. And his tea is growth, abilities, and expansion. And we're going to talk about his book, Peace, Love, and Murder. That's right. So tonight we have a trigger warning for all of the listeners out there. But before we get started, you guys know how Miss Liz rolls. Get over to all those platforms: Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, Blue Sky, Lemonade, all of those good platforms out there. And get out to those podcast apps, Podbean, Listen Notes, iHeartRadio, Spotify, all those good ones. And the ones that I haven't mentioned, those ones are out there as well. Miss Liz is on all of those as well. And check out babyboomers.org because Miss Liz has partnered with them, and you can find other incredible podcasts out there if you're looking to be on different shows and or hear different topics and different ways of serving tea in their way. So let's get started with disclaimer and then a beautiful intro, and then we're going to get Alan in here and we're going to spill his tea. So disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz's Tea Time is a global platform dedicating to sharing real life stories, diverse perspectives, and meaningful conversations that inspire awareness, healing, and connection. I'm Miss Liz is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment during the live broadcast, please grant StreamYard permission to display your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that all the content brought forward during any Tea Time show is presented in good faith. However, discussions may include opinions, beliefs, and perspectives that do not necessarily represent the views of Miss Liz or the Tea Time platform. Information shared by guests is based on their own experiences and is perceived to be accurate at the giving time of airing. All guests, viewers, and participants are responsible for using their own good judgment when considering any action or decision that may relate to these discussions. Some episodes may cover sensitive topics, including but not limited to trauma, abuse, grief, mental health, and other emotionally triggering subjects. Listeners' and viewers' discretion is strongly advised. Tea Time with Miss Liz is an open discussion forum designed to offer insight, inspire awareness, and create connection. It is not a substitute for professional, medical, legal, or therapeutical advice. If you require professional support, please seek assistance from qualified professionals or trusted resources in your area. If you have any questions regarding this disclaimer or the content of the discussion, you are welcome to contact me, aka Miss Liz, directly at my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com or visit my link tree at Miss Liz's Tea Time. By choosing to participate in, comment on, or view these live shows, you acknowledge and accept this disclaimer. Your participation is entirely voluntary. I, Miss Liz, welcomes you to join the conversation with an open heart, and if at any time you feel this platform is not right for you, I respect your wishes and decision and welcome you back whenever you are ready. Tea Time at Miss Liz is serving truth and awareness one cup at a time. Well, welcome to Tea Time with Miss Liz, where conversations are not always easy, but they are important because understanding humanity also means exploring the complexities, darkness, and the unanswered questions that shape our world. Tonight's guest brings decades of research, storytelling, and investigative insights into some of history's most chilling true crime stories. Please join me in welcoming Alan R. Warren, Canadian best-selling author, producer, and host of the international syndicated radio show House of Mystery. Alan has authored dozens of nonfiction books exploring serial killers, cults, criminal psychology, human trafficking, and some of the most infamous crimes in modern history. His work has been featured internationally, and he continues to challenge audience to look beyond headlines and ask deeper questions about society, manipulation, power, and the human mind. Tonight's Tea Time focuses on one of the most disturbing cultural stories of the 20th century, Charles Manson. Through Peace, Love, and Murder, Alan explored how an era associated with freedom, music, and peace became connected to manipulation, violence, fear, and cult influence. This is not a conversation about glorifying crime. It's about awareness, understanding influence, and asking how vulnerable people became trapped in dangerous belief systems. Tonight's Tea Time will explore the psychology behind cult influence, the Charles Manson story and cultural impact, manipulation, fear, and control, the intersection of media, crime, and society, what true crime teaches us about human behavior. So grab your cup and lean in. Tonight's conversation is eye-opening, thought-provoking, and rooted in real-life tea, truth, experience, and awareness. Let me get Alan in here and let's spill some tea. Welcome, Alan.
Well, thank you. I was going to throw some tea, not spill it. I mean, please.
You're my kind of guy. Let's just throw the tea out there.
Throw the tea. Yeah, get some excitement going on.
Right. Well, Alan, let's get to know you a little bit before we get into Charles. Who was Alan as a little guy, and who is Alan now?
Same guy.
Same guy. Just
it aches and pains a little more. I have less hair, all that sort of stuff, right? But the same guy. The body ages, but who was I? I was just a kid. I'm a radio guy, so since I could remember, I would listen to radio every night. With crystal radios. I was just into everything. I'd rather listen to radio than watch TV when I was a kid, right? And we're talking in the 60s. So last century, everyone. And so I was just a radio guy. But the problem is I had problems with communication. I guess, I was later diagnosed. I have I'm on the spectrum. And so I would be very quiet at times and around big groups, especially. So it took me time to get over that and get on with it. But radio was a big help for me as an adult to move through that. I still have issues with it. I definitely know it's there, but radio's been good to me. So that was that. A normal kid, normal upbringing. I guess whatever you call normal. I mean,
in the 60s, what was normal?
Well, I had a dog and a cat and parents, and went to school and walked to school type thing, and had a bike. I don't know. I was pretty normal, pretty average. How's that? Yeah, and as far as writing goes, I was not a good writer. I'm an average guy. I went to school and I don't think I came out as some scholar in writing or English lit or anything. I passed and everything was fine. But getting into the radio thing, I started getting asked by some magazines and newspapers if I could do an article, small articles. And so I would do that and help with editors. It would work all right. Eventually a publisher in Toronto offered me a book deal, like to do a book. And there are actually 4 books and they were short reads. So I did those and one became a hit. And so all of a sudden I had to write a full book and then it just took off from there. And so what I did was, just so you know, I started taking nighttime courses and different courses online and stuff to learn the things that I didn't pay attention to in school. Well, you take the English class, you get through, right? But when you're writing and then you're being reviewed and editors looking at it and everyone's throwing stuff at you, you start to realize, oh, geez, a what? A preposition? A what? Like I didn't pay attention, I got through and I didn't. So I started going and reviewing and going through that because I thought, well, I should become better at what I'm doing, not just, what I mean? So I started doing that. And I've been still taking things online to always get better.
So, Alan, is that when the throwing started?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Probably a little bit. So
you wanted to throw the tea at me.
Yeah. Somewhere in between there, it was like starting to throw. And it's like, what? What did that teacher tell me? No, it's all good. It's all good. I'm happy.
So Alan, how old were you when you wrote your first book?
Well, the first book that was published was only about, I was probably 50.
Oh.
Yeah. Look at me. Wow.
Look at you go.
Yeah. No, and that's what it was it was not an intention and it wasn't something I thought I would be doing. And in fact, the articles were fine, but I didn't think, oh, I'm going to be a writer. And in fact, that publisher tried for about a year, and I kept saying no. And finally, he got me into this deal, and it was, like I said, 20,000 word, 4 short reads that were part of a big series. And that took off. The one really took off. And so it was not anything I was looking for. I didn't want to do that. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be a writer, and that. And it's still very intimidating. So even for new writers or people just doing it or self-publishing, it's very intimidating, and then never goes away, unless you're James Patterson, maybe. But everything just, it's always a challenge. It's always work, and it's always, each book you do has another set of things you have to learn. And it's not like a cakewalk, not, it's just
You're not baking a cake.
no. And even that can be, but it just kind of goes with it. And I think each book you get better and you learn more and all that stuff. And I think that's just, you keep banging your drum, as they say, just keep moving and not get bogged down in that so much. So it hasn't been that long, really. I've got 12, 13 years of published work under me now. But I'm moving right along.
So, Alan, what got you into the world of true crime writing?
Oh, I don't know that there's anything in particular. I think all of the bodies in my basement, I had to start writing, right? So I didn't forget and keep them organized. But I don't know if that was it. But I kind of think that's it. No, it didn't. Like I said, it just, people were asking, because the show we were doing, it's still on. It was Mystery, House of Mystery. And so what it is it's about mysteries, and it could be paranormal mystery. It could be JFK shooting mystery. We just dealt with mysteries, and there were crime mysteries, of course. And that's who were interested in asking me to do articles. And then it went into books. My major, I got a master's in music, and my minor was criminology. So I do have, I know, quite a mix, eh? Music and criminology.
I told you, the guy next door, right?
Yeah. Something crazy going on with him. Don't turn your back. So I don't know where that come from. It's just something that's always, I've been a little bit curious with, and I've been interested in it, and I did it, and that was fine. And so I don't think, and the other thing I have to say is most of my books, especially the last ones, they're more history to me. Like even with Manson, I took the perspective of 1965 to 1970, San Francisco, America. So what I do is I put myself in that time zone. What would it be like to be 20 years old in San Francisco in 1965? What kind of rent would I pay? What kind of place would I live in? What would I have? Because, you think about, you get up in the morning and we have flat screen TVs and phones and internet, all that stuff. But what was it in 65? So I find out things like that. Then I find out what kind of work I would do, how much I would get paid, how I would get to work, how I would live. Then I go through the papers every single day and kind of go, well, what happened in San Francisco on July 1st? And you kind of going through, and then July 2nd. And you look at a lot of the stuff that's happening, and you take notes and you kind of pay attention. And so I lay that setting out. Then I also put in things like, the events that are going on. There was race riots. There were the Kennedy assassinations, Martin Luther King. There was the landing on the moon. There was all these things going on. And they all have to be put in there. And then I bring Manson in when I've got the setting done. It is important, because if you were born in 2000, you're 25, 26. That's not hard to believe. But you go pick up a book like that. You'd have no idea what was going on in 1965, what it would be like to live then. A payphone. Did you have a phone in your house? Was it a community phone? Was it, there's so many things. You have no idea. And look at the drugs that Haight-Ashbury, the whole pot thing going on, and the peace movements and Woodstock. That would be totally alien to you. So if I didn't have that in there, you couldn't understand as well why people acted and reacted the way they did. Like one of the biggest things in the Manson time in the 60s, there were so many parents giving their kids to people like Manson that were on their trip. It was acceptable. It was just, like when I talked to someone like Diane Lake Snake, as they called her, she was 14 and the parents said, "Here, stay with Charlie." And they were going on a road trip in an old homemade camper. And this was just kind of okay. But, if I just wrote that, oh yeah, they give her to them. Yeah, someone would be like, what? With 2020 mentality, you'd be like,
Yeah.
what? Why would you give your kid away? So it's really important to have the setting and the timing and the place in perspective, so you can sort of understand more of why people are doing what they're doing, and so so I really look at myself as more historical crime than just true crime, because there's so much more in it than just, oh, Charles Manson was born here. This is it. And this is who he, it's got to be more like the story of how he went through this world in 65, like what was he dealing with? So I think that's important. And I do that with all of them now. That's every book I write in the true crime area. It's always started out with where you are.
Well, Ellen, in the 60s and 70s, the neighbors were trusted more than
Yeah.
family were, right? Oh, just go to the neighbor's house. Like, go see what they got. Like, go play with your friends. There was, stay out till the lights go out. It was a lot of trusting the neighborhood. Where today it's like question at neighbor, right? Why are you going to the neighbor's house?
Yeah. What are they doing? I hear they like this. It's kind of like, it's different now. And that's sort of what I mean. Like if I just write it from today's point of view, you'd be confused, upset, probably bothered for certain people's actions because you didn't know why they were doing it. And you might research it, but you probably leave the book kind of going, oh, those people are nuts, and that's not the way it was. Because I still believe that. I remember talking with Jeff Gwynne, who writes true crime history sort of stuff. And once he even said that, I think Charles Manson in 1965, doing what he did and his whole life that he led with everyone around him, I don't know that he could have done that in 2025. Yeah. Do you know? Because the setting is so different. What's going on around us today is so much different than it was in 1965. Yeah. Plus, people are not the same innocence. A 14, 15-year-old in 1965 is not on the same level as today. So you have to take that in perspective too, right? And I get into everything. Like, man, my house gets crazy. My poor dogs. I just have all I do is run 1965 to 70 television shows. I mean, What's My Line and all this stuff, because you can't get a better reality than watching a reality show from 65. You see what they laugh about, then you can look it up. What's their jokes? How do they live? How do they talk to each other? What are the words they use between men and women? There's so much that you learn from that, if you're thinking today, they could never do half the things they did back then. Go on, it's just, it's kind of crazy in a way, but it's a good crazy. I love going through that and learning that's why things were the way they were,
And we were talking about this before we went live, right? Like it's the everyday person that is these killers. And a lot of the movies are pushing to the extreme because you've done interviews and you're like, it's not even close to what it is, right?
No, it's not even a scratch, or they take sometimes it is, but what they do is they just take the parts that are exciting, that will keep you tuned in, not the boring parts. And not one of my books, The Killing Game, which was about Rodney Alcala, who did a lot of the killings in the starting in the 60s right through. And, in his particular case as well, like they were filming a movie thing for Oxygen, and I went to LA for that. And I was sitting there, and so much of it was not in the show. And I even asked the director, and she said to me, look, if we put all that in there, people lose interest and they switch the channel. We want to keep them going. There's a time when we got to keep having something happen. Just like, some people say every chapter something's going to happen. It's the same. So they'll bypass a lot of the, let's say, more boring, common stuff that those people did in their life, like going to school or whatever. And they just skip that and put in the thrilling stuff. And so you miss a lot. And I learned that the hard way. I didn't realize that's kind of how they did it. It was kind of like, oh my God, it's not even close to the book. But, you learn, live and learn. Yeah.
Well, Ellen, we have some questions that are coming into the studio. I just want to get them out to you. The first one that's coming in is from Gerald. What inspired Alan R. Warren to study criminal psychology?
Oh, I don't know what inspired me. I think, if I was to be honest, I think that I was very confused in my own childhood. I lived in a situation that was not real pleasant, and I was, like I was saying to you earlier, a lot of the lifestyle with my father, being such a bad alcoholic and abusive, and growing up with that when I was real young in the 60s, that was a real tough time, because he could slap me around, and even the neighbor who was a cop would kind of think, yeah, you kind of deserved it, or what did you do? It was such a different time. And so growing through that, I think maybe it was learning to understand my situation, and not necessarily, and I'm not saying poor me or anything, but what I'm saying is I look at it and kind of go, wow. And it helped me a lot in a sense that I look back at that and I'm not angry with my dad at all. Nothing. He's passed now, but I feel no anger or hate. And I kind of see it more like, wow, what did he go through to become that? I mean, God, what happened to him? He wasn't born asked to be this way. He wasn't going to go, oh, I'm going to be this, something happened that was pretty rough for him. And I know it was something to do with his father dying in the war, and he had to quit school at grade 8 and take care of the mother and the sister and work and do all this stuff. And he had no education, and times were tough, and he went through a lot. And so I kind of have to go, you can't be so judgmental on people like that. You have to kind of go, wow,
It was a different time and place, right?
Yeah.
We were children that were born in the 2000s, a little go to your room. Oh my God, I'm punished.
Yeah. Then they're on your phone.
Go to our room. We'd be like, okay, yes,
yeah,
we're good.
Right. Yeah. I'm not getting a belt tonight. But it's a different world, and that's sort of why I emphasize that in the books and the writing, because it's just so different, and how you can be different. I mean, look at the early 60s. A woman could not even have their own bank account or church account. The father or the husband had to sign off on it. That's crazy. But that's just in my lifetime. And that's the things that someone today would kind of go, what? What do you mean? They just wouldn't have it. But, so you got to have that stuff there. And it's helped me learn a lot. So I don't know if that helped really answer that question, but I think learning about my own situation got me into the psychology of it, and criminal behavior was just part of that.
Well, I think it's an understanding as well, right? Because you're doing stories where they have similarities of alcoholism and abusive and stuff like that. It's not that your dad was a serial killer or anything. No. It was the similarities, right? What did they go through that they brought this on to us? And then it's the generational cycles. Who breaks it, right?
Yeah.
And who says, like we talked about this before we went live, like we think that serial killers are even before they're born, like
there's something else that the lifestyle that you live with your parents or your family and country, it can add to it. It can actually help you do what you do, or even make it seem more acceptable. I don't know if that's the right word, but the situation you're in presents it, but it doesn't start it. Not in general, not from my understanding and from what I see. And like I said, half the people that I've interviewed in prison and people that are killers, I think I had a worse childhood than they did. And that's not good or bad. It's just like when you go look at what you've gone through, and the life you had and what they've had, and you think, oh geez, that wouldn't be enough to make someone a killer. It shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And so there's more to it than that. But one thing that's particular is usually these killers think they're the good guy.
Oh.
And I don't mean like, oh, I'm good and you're bad in that sense, but more like they're doing the right thing. In their mind, they're living in a world where they're trying to achieve something to make that world better. They think there's something wrong and they need to fix it. So you see a lot of the serial type killers that are doing a serial type killing where they're killing the same type of person, over and over again, like the same look, the same hair, the same dressing, the same age, whatever. Sometimes it's to eliminate someone in their mind. Maybe they're trying to kill their mother over and over again or something. That's always there. But there's something else going on, and they think they're doing something good. There's a lot of them that are. It's not just like you see on TV where it's some incredible genius killer planning this all out, and they're like super smart, and it's not Hannibal Lecter. It's not, that is not real, right? So that's kind of 90% of what you meet. There's something else going on in their mind. There's something they need to fix or complete, and that's their goal. And the killing or raping and whatever else is that's just part of it,
Well, it's a trauma, right? The unresolved trauma that lives in that person.
Totally. And that makes it, that sticks. They relive it. And some of them choose to relive it for a reason, because there's something they're trying to achieve. Man, it can be complicated, but it depends on the situation, but it's always the same thing. They are trying to get somewhere by what they're doing. They have
So,
an outcome.
Alan, do you think that gets a comfort zone for them?
They think it will, and trying to achieve it and working on that gives them the comfort that they feel. Like, even if it's an excitement, a thrill, or some sexual thing, they're doing it not necessarily for the same reason that an average person might be looking for a sexual thrill. There's something beyond that. It means something to them. The power or the aggression. There's so much more going on in that person's mind when they're doing the attack, or they're doing whatever they're doing. So it's not always, the act is always representative of something else. Like I said, there's always that case that it will be, but in general.
We have another question here for you from everything Gladstone, I think it is. Which case affected Alan the most personally?
Oh, I probably personally would be the Murder Times 6 is the book I wrote, and it was about the Wellsgrave murderer, David Shearing, I believe was his name. And probably that one, because he had murdered a family of 6 that were camping, like grandparents, parents, and the 2 little girls. And he went and killed the 4 adults after watching them for 3 days so that he could get the 2 little girls, take them home, and assault them. And that was probably the most, that definitely took the most toll on me, and definitely, hit me the most. And I think because I was going around visiting family members and people that lived through it at the time, and this guy's up for parole. Okay.
Wow.
Yeah. And it's just like, oh, okay.
Do you think he would do it again?
Well, you see, it's how can I say that? Because some years have passed and going to jail. Let me just say this. I think that he would have no problem doing it again, but I don't think the same intent is there, because at that time, it was a different time in his life. How do I say that? Let me just say, when I was in seeing him, he just sort of explained about the assaults on the little girls like it was the youngest one, who was 9, I believe, at the time. He said he he said, well, I tried with her because everyone thought they were both alive for 2 weeks, the kids. And he said, oh no, you know, he tried with her and she just couldn't learn how to do anything. So I shot her in the head after 24 hours. And you're like, wow, you know, I don't know that he would do the same type of killing, but he definitely, in my opinion, didn't really seem to care that he had killed someone that wasn't pleasing him enough at age 9. You know, that in itself, that callousness and that carelessness about it's just a life type thing.
No remorse.
You know? No, yeah, it was almost like, so that in itself means, oh, man, that's hard. You know, that's really hard. This guy's hard. He shouldn't, you know, I don't think people like that should be out. You know, I get myself into trouble because I always say things like that, but it's like, why, you know, I mean, there's, you know, he killed 6 people. He also killed another person. And you sit there and you kind of go, wow, well, you know, he can be found God and he could be forgiven and everything's great. But man, how do you just say, okay, you can go out now. You've been a good prisoner. That's just, there's too many people still alive and survivors and family members that wouldn't want to. And would you want that guy living next door to you? Seriously?
No.
Talking like that? You'd be like, no. So I don't know. So that was probably the most affected I got from a case emotionally, you know, inside, like you're like all disturbed and stressed and upset and going through all this stuff because you kind of go through the emotions of people that you're talking to. And so something like that, and there was kids involved and stuff like that. So that was a really, that would be the one. Yeah.
So Alan, did he target that family or did he just decide that that was the family?
Well, he didn't target them on purpose. He was walking home from work and he went through the park. He would cut through the park where these people were camping to get to his home, his trailer. And so when he was walking through, he spotted the 2 little girls playing in a field or something somewhere. So he watched them and then he followed them back to the camp. And then for the next 3 days, he kept on returning to that camp after work and he would watch them. And he was getting to know who was who was staying there, like, you know, the adults, the kids, when they got up, when they went to bed. He was trying to put together a scenario of what there was. So he started intending on doing it. And that took 3, I think day 4 is when he went down there at night after they put the girls to bed in the tent. And then he killed the parents and grandparents and it went from there. So it was like just by circumstance that he walked by and ran and saw them.
Wow.
Yeah.
You just never know, right?
No. You know, and it's disturbing, right? Yeah.
And it kind of goes with the question. You kind of answered it a little bit by sharing that story, Alan. Has Alan ever interviewed someone directly connected to a case?
All of them. I think that like with the Manson one, of course, I didn't interview Charles Manson. What I did do is I interviewed as many of the family members as I could over the last 15 years, which was a lot of them. Most of the key people, you know, right from Tex Watson down. So I think that that, and then every other case, I don't usually get into doing a case where I'm going to write and have it published unless I get to meet all the characters. And if there's family like the Murder Times 6, it was them that mentioned it to me, approached me. And if they weren't going to get involved, I wouldn't do it. Do you know what I mean? And that's the same with all of them, because I want some firsthand stuff going on. I don't want to be second or third. It's okay to get some information through the papers and the media, of course, but you want to talk to the cops that arrest. You want to talk to doctors that are involved, and you want to talk to the killer if they're still alive. You want to talk to the family members. You want to get all of that in there to make it a complete book, I think. So most of them I have. There's sometimes you can't. Sometimes they're dead, right? I did that Leopold and Loeb from the 1920s, not 100 years ago. And of course, but I got like the police records. I got some of the notes from the detectives. I got a lot of stuff to help that, even notes between the two of them and letters and stuff like. So I do have a lot of firsthand information, but it's tougher when it's 100 years old, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'd say 70 to 80%.
Wow.
Yeah.
We have another question for you, Alan. It's how important is psychology in understanding serial killers?
Well, I think it's really important if we're ever going to try and, I don't know if I want to say cure, but at least remedy some of these issues. The biggest problem, but is we have a pretty good psychological overview and understanding, and there's some really good doctors out there that really understand a lot. The biggest problem is most of the cases are done from an outside perspective. They don't get to sit down with Charles Manson and analyze him for a couple of years and actually interview him and have a real treatment. He's not in a clinic seeing a doctor or doctors, and they're not really learning direct details. It's all from actions. It's all from people around him. It's all from family members, and it's all secondhand, which is good for leading you in direction. But I think it would be better if they could directly involve them in some sort of counseling or treatment. And unfortunately, the way the law is set up is they don't have to do that. It's against the human rights to be forced into treatment. So it's, yeah, well, yeah, you kind of, it's, again, I get myself into trouble because I'll say things like, either you do it or you're gone, buddy. You know, it's the death penalty. But, you know, I'm not real fussy on people that we know 100% did all of this bad stuff, carnage, caused so much damage. Fair enough. We live in a country and we've decided that we're not going to kill people. Okay. In general. So the death penalty's off. But if we're going to keep them alive and keep them and pay for their survival for years and years, why can't we get something out of it, like treatment? Why can't we figure out why that person's done that? You do some tests on the brain, on the person, find out. Like we're not doing it to be mean. We're doing it so that we can better ourselves as humans, you know, and start looking more positive toward each other than negative. I mean, for whatever the reason people go out and kill, and there's a lot of them, it would be nice if we could analyze it more and more each time we do get it, because otherwise we're not really growing much.
Well, we're just locking them up and we're not understanding why they did it in the first place. So we're just repeating the pattern.
That's kind of what I'm saying. And I think that, you know, there's those that think, well, no, you can't force them. That's against you, not very human and all, you know, that sort of thing. And they're right. Don't get me wrong. I think that's a good standard, but we're not getting anywhere with this. And it keeps going on, and we keep having these scenarios. And we're not going to get much better until we actually get involved in it. You know, I think that's just my opinion. You know, I'm not a doctor. I just play one.
Well, we got a couple more questions for you, Alan. The next one is, what can society learn from studying criminal behavior?
Well, you kind of hope that you learn how we get ourselves involved in these things. When we do something that's criminal, we do something that's wrong. Why? If we understand why we do it, maybe we can make it better for the next generation. And I think with anything, we got to look at that. You know, when you see something going on in it's a bad light by something happening. Someone's, you know, doing something illegal. You know, are they stealing bread because they're hungry? You know, that's really basic, and you can kind of understand it and get it. But sometimes there's a lot of crimes that go on that you don't know why they're hurting other people or killing other people. And it's like, it would be nice if we kind of got a good understanding, because maybe it's always the hope that you can kind of prevent it from happening with the younger people if you understand more what's going on physically or mentally. You know, it could be two cases. So, you know,
with a serial killer, once they have their first kill, they hunger for a next one, correct?
Quite often. Again, it depends on their motives. It depends. In general, because they usually have, like, their motive is, you know, they're killing their mother 500 times over and over again, or they're looking to improve the world by eliminating certain people or something in the world. Depends what their motives are, and it becomes where that's the most fulfilling thing that they can live for, is that motive, right? So usually, yeah.
The next question I have for you, Ellen, is how does Alan separate facts from sensationalism? sensationalism and true crime. I've never heard of that word.
Well, I think the meaning behind that would be like, you know, the triggers. You know, what's exciting about, you know, she did this. You know, I love Nancy Grace, and I know her, and we've worked. You know, one of my co-hosts actually went to work for her show, so we have a good relationship. But that's kind of sensationalizing it a little. You know, like when she was doing the show, coming on breaking news, you know, and they make it kind of tabloidish in a sense. I don't really, that's there. I don't do that. The same as I don't get into, like, you're not going to read the Manson book and hear about the blood dripping and the temperature of the room and all that sort. You only need to know what and why they did it. You know, like a lot of what he had ordered done by the people was reactionary. He was trying to react to something that happened to him. So, you know, so he was doing these things. So you don't need to get into all that wild stuff. You know, this, how many times someone stabs them and get into detail about all that. I don't. There's writers that do, and they do it really well. That's not where you're going to get with me. For me, it is really about the time and the fact, and not about what's exciting and what about what's not. And it is hard in the sense that when you're doing a case, you can get a lot of details from sources, direct sources. That's why it's important. And then you can get a lot of rumor. You know, that's the hardest thing to separate, because you'll get, man, you're doing a case, you'll get emails daily, and it's like, did you see, you know, did you see what she said or did to this guy when I was did you know that this guy was sleeping with this neighbor down the road who happened to be the daughter of this one that was killed? Like, you get tons of that. And you really kind of have to go through a lot of it to see what's true and what's not, or what you can. So that's probably the most time consuming thing, is all the rumors, because it's that way with anything. Because even you go to a town or a city and you're in a neighborhood and something happens there, everyone has to say something. Oh yeah, I knew him. I used to see him. He was strange, right? He always had, you know, he put a feather in his hair every day when he went to work, or, you know, they say things.
But the week before them not finding out that guy was a killer, oh, he was the nicest guy in the neighborhood.
Exactly. And that's what, you know, so you have to kind of go, you get all that stuff because oh, he's writing a book. Did you know that, you know? And it's like, well, okay. And so there's so much of that. And how much is it just feeling, emotion, anger, and how much of it is real, you know? And that's the hardest thing to determine, because some people will tell you stories and they are 100%, like they're telling you like they were there and they saw it, and they didn't. And it was like their brother's girlfriend's hairdresser told them, type thing. You're like, okay, you can't write a
hairdresser with the most rumors in town.
Yeah, and you can't write a book on that. I mean, it can give you ideas and you can look for it, but if you're doing a true book, you want to source it all, and the closer you can get to the real source, the better in any case. And like I said, sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can't. You can do the best you can, and that's it. But I don't want to create stuff, if that makes sense. So some things will get missed. And sometimes people will say that in a review, oh, he didn't tell you about this girl that slept with and you're like, because it meant nothing. And we don't even know it's true, you know, things like that. But you're not going to get that with me.
It's not going to bring the person back who he killed, right? Like they slept with the neighbor, like.
Right. So sensationalism is not something I'm really keen on. It's not, if it's something really freaky or something that is like that, if it's true, it has to be in there. Fair enough, but I'm not going wild on it.
So, Alan, how did you get the name for tonight's book, The Peace, Love, and Murder?
You know, I don't know. No, I was, because I have an editor, and I'd met her on the very first publisher she works for a lot of these publishers doing editing and stuff, and we hit it off. And so then I use her now with all of my books, even if it's not that publisher, it's someone else or self-publisher. And so I send her all my stuff all the time, and she'll send back and we'll work it. And for some reason I was throwing names at her and she was throwing names back. We just do that. I'll say, you know, like, peace, love, and drugs. Like, I don't know, sure, you're saying stuff.
Mhm.
And then it just happened. And all of a sudden it was like, I think we had 4 or 5 names, and peace, love, murder was one of them. And then I send it to the co-hosts when I'm down to 3 or 4 and kind of go, which one? And I think 4 out of 5 of them picked peace, love, murder. It just sort of, but why or how, I don't know. I mean, it really captured it because everybody was under the peace, love, and all those people that were looking for peace, love, even Manson probably at the early stage, and it ended up in murder. Like, I don't have to say, killer or something aggressive or something like that, but it ended up, the peace, love ended up in murder. And that's something we didn't want, but that's what happened.
Well, we have a question here for you, Alan, from Sean. Is what deeper message does Alan hope readers take away from his work?
The biggest thing, and why I attack it from history, is because when you see or hear something going on today, when you hear the complaints, like, how it's tense politically and all that stuff around the world and in the US. And when you hear about, people this and that, or this shouldn't happen, or these shouldn't, and all that stuff, you got to realize that when you're back in the 50s and 60s, and even back in the 30s, this was all happening then. It was all going on. And it's just something that's human nature. And we seem to continually fight this fight over and over. And I think if anybody, you should sort of kind of take lessons from what our forefathers went, really pay attention to what they went through. And I think a lot of that is lost today. I think a lot of people they're missing what our elders went through in order for us to live a life that we have. There's so much good going on in the world, in our country, in our city. There's so many good people. There's so many good things that we have that nobody else had before. And it was because of the work and the suffering that people before us went through. And I think we need to pay attention more to the history, to what went on, how we got to where we got. It's not perfect. It always needs work. It's a work in progress for life. But hopefully people become more positive by doing that. Sounds corny. I write about murder, but I want you to be more positive. But I want people to start thinking about the good things they have and how we got it and how we should be pleased with how far we've come. And you can't ignore the bad, but you kind of got to go, wow, how do we keep making this better? Let's focus on some of this good stuff and being nice to each other. Boy, I sound corny, but just being positive and being nice. Like, you take a situation that's bad, they happen today, right? We still have murders, we still have crime, but how can we make it better? I want them to think in that direction. I don't want them coming out of the book going, oh my God, that was terrible. Oh my God. And getting new locks for their doors, right? And stuff, an alarm system. I want them to think, how did they make it through? And how do we make it through? How do we make it better? How can I make this community better and then world, and it sounds corny, but I think hopefully people get a positive read. They see the positive in the way I write it. I'm not writing it from, oh my God, this is, it's more about how it happened and how we can help rather than not,
Yeah. We have a question that just came in for you, Alan, and it's, what patterns have you noticed across different criminal cases?
Patterns. Oh, there's so many. It depends on the type of case we're talking. Probably, well, I don't know, pattern in the killer themselves or pattern in the crime. A lot of times in the killers, the patterns are, again, they somehow they live in a different world than most of us do, and they're trying to make things right. They're trying to do something good. So in their mind, they're fixing something, whether it's their own pain or whether it's something they see wrong in the world or something they see that's shouldn't be. They've got to eliminate bad people, whoever they consider bad. There's a lot of different patterns in that way. I think the pattern itself is having a pattern. How's that? Yeah. That's pretty lame, but it's so hard to generalize that. I guess I've got too many cases going on in my mind to say this is a common pattern or that is, yeah, I that one was kind of, I need more detail.
So Alan, do you write about female serial killers as well?
No, not that I don't intentionally. I have 5 or 6 cases going on at a time. And what you're doing is you're trying to collect the information. And so people send me case or ideas all the time. And again, what I do is I don't care if it's male or female. It's more about where I can get the information. So I get cases on female killers or female criminals. And then, because I did, the Morse murder and Maria Hendley or whatever, I wrote about her, and she's in one of my books. But that's not common, only because I can't get direct information. Like a lot of times you get the case, and then you seek out, you talk to people, and you try to find all that stuff. And if you just strike out, you strike out, and it sits on a file on my computer. That's why I've got 5 or 6 cases at least going, because you're talking to the attorneys, or you're talking to the prison system in the country that you're dealing with, or the state or province, and then you got to get approved to talk to the criminal. Then you got to talk to their person, and there's so many steps to go through, and it takes time and get different information. Freedom of Information Act so FBI or police files, and then finding family members and finding people that were there, neighbors, friends, and getting connected with them. And if they all want to take part, if they don't, then you got this file, and you could do a book, but it's not going to be that good. You can tell the story, but you're missing a lot of direct information, so
Yeah.
So I will do, believe me, it doesn't matter. I don't care who the case is about necessarily, as more of if I can get a hold of them or get a hold of the people around them in the case,
So you're a writer that needs facts. No
Oh
rumors.
yeah. If you're going to do true crime, nonfiction, I want some source. I want some real stuff. That's so important to me. I don't want to just do what I see on TV and what I read on the internet and stuff like that. I mean, that's all fun. I mean, I guess you could do that, but I want to go deeper. I want to go more into it and with the people involved in it, rather than just do that, if that makes sense. It just,
Yeah.
if I'm doing fiction, I mean, hey, you can take some real people and then mix some stories in, and go with it. But
Well,
not
Alan, you
that.
told me you have 39 books. What was the hardest book to write?
Oh, it depends on what the challenge is. Hardest book to write, probably. The hardest book to write would have been The Butcher of Hanover, Fritz Harman, and that was it's a case that happened in Germany. And the reason is, you see, because I did Leopold and Loeb, who were famous murderers in the 1920s in Chicago, and at the same time, Fritz Harman was doing murders in Hanover, Germany. And what really surprised me was how in each country and in each city, they were treated so differently because of what society thought of them and what was going on. Because they were both, gay couples that were doing this, that were involved. And each country had a different idea of what was right and what was wrong. And in Hanover, a lot of things were legal. They had, cabarets with drag bars, and they had all this stuff. And it was kind of a social fun activity whereas in Chicago, people would underground, and, it was so different. So I kind of was following that case. But when I got into the Fritz Harman, I got all the police, the detective files. And the guy that was one of the murderers was actually a part-time cop, we'll say. He was a cop. He was working the train systems for the cops. Like, he was rounding up people and doing things, and he was killing people. So anyway, I got all the different notes that they were taking in the files from all the cops. So when I got it all, then I translated it all from German to English, and I still couldn't understand it because it was 100-year-old language, and it wasn't direct. Germany had several little kingdoms at the time. and they had different languages and the different slang words and stuff. So I had to find someone that understood those, because then they explain what they were saying in the notes, because they would say something like, I got a good egg last night, and you're like, what is that? What is that? Right? And they go, oh no, that means it's fried well. And they start telling you about all this stuff, but just to read it in English, it was like none of it made sense. And they said even Germans today, a lot of wouldn't understand a lot of what was written, or how they spoke, because they had such a different way of speaking. And so that was the hardest book. It took forever to get all that information correct and done. And then I had to write the book. And that had so much, I mean, because they kept that guy's brain, Fritz Haarmann's brain, until just recently. And it was on, and they were testing it and doing, there's so much to that story.
So they are testing one brain.
Yeah, but that's Germany. And it was so interesting. The whole story was just, there was so much stuff going on and so many things that it was just truly, I think it was one of the best books I've written. Not the bestseller, but it was certainly the most informative and well put together. And I think it was written like a really good story. I think it was really, really turned out well. But man, that was hard.
Yeah. So do you have any books in the works? You said you got five at a time, and you were up at 5 in the morning. So are you working on something that we should know about?
Well, I'm doing all sorts of stuff. Like one book I'm working on is a case out of Seattle. It happened in the 60s. It's a real case. And it was about a family. It was there was a senator in Washington State back then in the 50s, 60s. And there was a group of going around in Washington that were scared about the communists, Chinese, hiding across the border in Canada and BC, and they were going to come across any day and take over the state. Okay, so they're going but they were serious, and they thought this senator was somehow involved in their mind. So they went to kill him and his family in his house in Seattle, but he had moved, and they actually killed his son and wife and their kids. And so it's taken from that story. So that one I've been working on for about 5 years. And that one, because there's a lot of information. So that one's a tough one I'm working on. Another one that just secret, you can tell everybody. I have a new book released that it's just on Amazon. It's just an ebook and paper book back right now. And it's called Cults. And what it was it's just a interview book I did through the House of Mystery, where I interviewed survivors of different cults. So I interviewed a lady that was survived the Jim Jones thing when they were drinking the Kool-Aid. She was 5 years old. She escaped and went through the jungle like 30 kilometers to get help. And she survived. So I have an interview with her. 2 people that survived the NXIVM cult, where they were tattooing them. I also had someone that was in the Waco, Texas assault and lived, and I did an interview with him too. So they're all cult people like that lived through a major cult, and I interview them kind of modern time here today, like not today, but and so that's what this is, a book of cult interviews for people that lived through some of the major ones that you've seen all the press and media, and you saw all the stories and that stuff, but it's actually sitting down and just talking to someone that was there, and I conduct my interview sort of like I'm very personal. It's not like, it's not like you'll see anywhere else. It's very much like, who are you and who your family, how did you live? I get into real things like what they like, what they don't like, how they're, if they watch certain TV shows and stuff. I'm more into them. Yeah. And then we get into where they came from and how they think that might make them different or not, or how they live with it, things like that. So yeah, they're interesting. So that is out on Amazon. It's just Cults. And it's up there now. It will be in bookstores about 2 or 3 weeks.
Awesome. So Alan, what is your final message to all the listeners tonight?
Hi.
I just threw the tea.
Yeah, I just threw the tea. I'm so goofy. You know what? Live long and prosper. make the best of your life, make the best of everything around you, and stay positive in no matter what. And it's a great day if you want to make it that way. And man, I'm corny. I'm getting old, I guess. That's it. Just be nice, be happy, and that's all I can say. And if you enjoy my books, great. If you don't, that's great too. Remember, I said I'm a terrible writer.
But thank you so much, Alan, for sitting with me tonight and sharing this. And thank you to the listeners that joined and brought in your questions. I could not do this without all of you guys. Just going to do a quick wrap up of what tonight's tea time was. And I'll be back on Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday of next week. And we'll close up May and then we'll start June. What a powerful and deeply thought-provoking conversation. Alan, thank you for bringing your insight, research, and perspective to the tea time table tonight. Conversations around true crime and cult psychology are uncomfortable at times, yet they reveal important truths and influence vulnerability and the human need for belonging. Tonight reminded us that some of the history's darkest stories are not only about crime, they are about warnings, about manipulation, unchecked power, emotional vulnerability, and how easily fear and influence can reshape people's choices. Your work encourages people to look deeper than sensational headlines and ask difficult questions. How do people become influenced? Why do some seek control while others seek belonging? And what can society learn from these tragedies moving forward? One of the strongest takeaways tonight is this: awareness matters. Because understanding human behavior helps us recognize warning signs, think critically, and protect ourselves and others from harmful influence. Here's some food for thought to leave with everyone tonight. How often do we truly question the voices, influence, and narratives surrounding us before giving them power over our own thinking? Because critical thinking is not fear, it is protection. Thank you, Alan, for bringing the awareness, perspective, and depth to the difficult conversations that many avoid, but society still needs to have. Until next time, stay curious, stay aware, and keep serving real life tea, one conversation at a time. And I'll see everybody next week, and we'll do this all over again.